This week on Dirt.
The glory days live on. In this Hall of Fame year, tradition continues. The torch has been passed.
Doug Logan is on a well-deserved vacation, so joining me, a familiar name and face, Larry Nuber. Larry, Outlaw Week in New York State is always interesting. 1992 was no exception.
Andy, always very interesting. Always a lot of news, but unfortunately, the biggest headlines were the weather. Now, the weather has dogged the Outlaws all year long. They've lost 25% of the races when they pulled into Middletown Sunday night. Yep, you guessed it, more of that stuff that plummets from the heavens. And this was after a fairly long drive from southern Pennsylvania on Friday night, where they had been, of course, rained out again.
Well, the Outlaws did get to run a little later in the week. We'll see that a little later in the show. But first, Larry sets the stage.
This is what the drivers encountered. Lake Orange County. Suitable for powerboats, maybe. Fortunately, it does drain off, but in heavy rain periods, the infield water can rise to depths of 3 feet. A near-driver tragedy is the season's most emotional story. It's about one of the most legendary drivers of all time. This rain turned thoughts from racing. It was a time for reflecting, particularly in the wake of the very pleasing news that Doug Wolfgang, seriously injured a couple of months ago, is finally coming home. Some very real human drama saved his life. All those involved are comfortable enough now to talk. And what you'll see next is not usual TV fare being practiced, no action video exists. But the human drama so captivating, we live it now through those heroes.
They have some large implement tires in the infield, and Doug clipped one of those with his left front, and it tore the left front wheel off the car, and the car went up in the air. When it slammed down, it looked like maybe his foot slammed down on the throttle or something, because the car actually accelerated, and with the left front wheel being tore off, he had no brakes. He hit the wall so hard, it was unbelievable. It looked just like an Indy car. You know how when they'll hit a crash wall, they splat right on the wall, and both right side tires broke off the car and went flying through the air. And you know, that's about as hard as I've ever seen anybody hit a crash wall in a sprint car.
Was the fire, did it erupt immediately, and was Doug ever conscious, best you could tell?
No, Doug really wasn't conscious. At one time he did move in the car after a couple minutes, but it was just basically he raised his arm up and laid it back down very gently. The fire itself, I saw some pictures that were taken from the grandstands right after he hit the wall. He was still sliding down the track. The right front corner of the car was on fire from where the dry sump tanks, you know, ruptured. The main fire, after he hit the wall, I jumped on my four-wheel quad runner and went out on the racetrack. I knew he was going to be hurt, and I wanted to go out there and try and help him. And about halfway out, I seen a fire crew run up and spray a little bit of fire underneath the car. And as soon as they sprayed, the thing really erupted. It looked like maybe there'd been a pool of alcohol.
Was it foam or water they sprayed on a crash scene?
No, it was neither. It was dry chemical. And as soon as they sprayed that, it blew the fuel around, which made the fire just enormous. And the people that first attacked the fire they didn't have real good fire gear on, so they had to get out of there because it got so big and hot so fast they couldn't stay close to the car.
Well, the car, I was way out in the pit area, and somebody yelled fire, and I looked down there, and the car was in a blaze, about a 20 by 20 area, and Wolfie was right in the middle of it, and I kind of slowly walked down there, and my father mentioned to me, you better not go down there because it was a pretty bad situation, and I went ahead down there, and as I got there, I thought, you know, this is in the 90s, and we're putting men on the moon, and here's going to be a guy burned to death within feet from me, you know, and I thought that, you know, how could this happen? And about that time, Steve Beitler walked into a blaze. I mean, literally walked into a blaze, and it seemed like an hour, you know, before he come out, and I was dumbfounded and didn't know what to do, and actually didn't do much. When Beitler come back out, I figured somebody else a little bit more equipped with a racing suit on, you know, or something better get in there and help, and I helped a little bit. Somebody got him out from the other side of the car. I don't know who it was. I was trying to get the wheel off from the left side of the car, and somebody moved him out from the right side of the car, and I seen his rear end come off the seat, so I just put my arms under his rear end and helped boost him up. But actually, if there was a hero under this situation, it'd definitely be Steve Beitler.
I remember turning around looking at the car, and it really scared me because I didn't think we were going to get Doug out then. As big as the fire was, as long as it had been burning, as long as he'd been in the car, you know, you got a terrified feeling that you were so helpless. You couldn't get it out. You couldn't get him out of the car. The fire was getting bigger, but I knew if we quit, there was no chance at all. He had zero chance of survival if we quit.
Well, Larry, you have to be brave to drive a race car, but for Steve Beitler to save another driver's life, that's courage personified.
Sure is.
What's Wolfie's condition?
Well, dramatically improved, Andy. He's on his way home. He did have third-degree burns on his legs, very serious burns to his fingers, not the loss of them as previously reported, and he's working to improve some damage he suffered to his lungs.
Good news indeed. And good news in just a moment. The engines get fired up and we go racing. Stay tuned. Rainouts. Well, the rains finally went away, the skies finally parted, and the Outlaws went to work at Rolling Wheels. Here's Larry with our feature presentation.
Wonder of all wonders. This is New York. This is a sprint car race, and it's not raining. Well, we've already informed you of some of the news, and certainly news that it's not dropping from the sky. But there's also another piece of very significant new information. Never before at this part of the season has a driver, other than the traditional Big Three, won as many races as the newest regular face in Victory Lane, Stevie Smith Jr.
The owner, Al Hamilton, stuck it out with me. We've had some bad times and had some rough times, and he's been there the whole time. He just stuck behind us. And the guys, they've always been there too. We finally got it all put together. It takes 4 or 5 years to become a good driver on the local tracks. And then I think it takes a couple more years after that of traveling around to become a good driver with the Outlaws. I think they're a step ahead of the local drivers because they've been on so many different tracks and seen so many new things that every time we're racing with them or against them, they're just always a step ahead. So I think it might take maybe 5 or 6, 7 years of racing a sprint car to be a contender with the World of Outlaws.
But tonight was not to be for the new guard, but for the most famous names in sprint car racing. Well, Smith did win his heat, but so did Sammy and fast qualifier Mark Kinzer. And when Mark won the dash, earning the feature pole, one began to wonder, another threat to the dynasty. Well, when the green dropped, so did the other shoe on Chris Esch. He immediately disappeared. Eastern Hope 1, gone. A lap 11 restart changed the entire complexion of this race. After baiting him high, Swindell exploded past Donnie Kreitz for third on one of those clearly defined but still unfair outlaw restarts. Donnie's race was never the same. Eastern Threat 2, gone. This impolite exchange during a later caution didn't improve anybody's position nor their social standings. Swindell faded, unusually, as the Kinzers rode off. Once in traffic, Mark slipped way behind, and when Dale Lasco showed tail numbers to Mark, he made certain that the yellow he needed was secured. A yellow slowed the swarm 2 laps from the end, and will ruin the suspense and tell you Steve the King won again, but Mark never relented.
Yeah, I knew there was only 2 laps left. The only thing I'd seen, I hate to let it, felt like I was running pretty good, maybe got a little bit of a lead, but every time yellows come out, Mark would stick his nose back in there for 2 or 3 laps, and when you're leading a race, sometimes it's sort of a little bit of a disadvantage. Let a guy close in on you and get pumped up for the last 2 laps, and he made a good run at me, and we're just glad to get here. Seems like we've had more seconds than we've had first through this swing, but we won a few of them, and we're going to get here once in a while.
And I'm told today is your birthday. What are you, 24 now?
Yeah, getting close. I think I might be getting close to 30. I'm not sure.
Just 24 hours earlier, Steve, Mark, and Carl Kinzer were passing away the rain delay hours at Lebanon Valley thusly. Some powerful cards, I guess. Doug Wolfgang is one of the most successful sprint car drivers of all times, and one of his most stirring victories took place at Syracuse in the Sprint Car Nationals back in 1989, the subject of this week's Hall of Fame flashback.
This week in our Hall of Fame flashback, we go back to the 1989 Round Round Nationals for the World of Outlaws at the Moody Mile during Super Dirt Week. Ironically, this was the year that the USA organization, a rival sprint car sanctioning body, was in operation. That meant that Steve Kinzer and Sammy Swindell would not compete at the Moody Mile. Nevertheless, it was a fantastic race with a controversial finish. Here's the battle that raged all race long. Doug Wolfgang on the inside in car number 8. Dave Blaney on the outside in car number 7, battling for the lead down the back straightaway. Here's the controversial part. Blaney on the outside tries to make the pass for the lead. The caution flag comes out. It looks like Blaney is in front of the Wolf. The World of Outlaw officials reverse it and put Wolfgang up in front. Wolfgang would lead the remainder of the distance and go on to win the 1989 Ground Round Nationals at Super Dirt Week. It was one of the biggest wins of Wolfgang's career. Doug Wolfgang, a true champion. Hopefully, he'll be back soon.
Ah, Doug Wolfgang in Victory Lane. Larry, do you think we'll ever see that again?
Andy, I think you can make book on it. I really do. I believe that before April 1 of 1993, that Victory Lane site, Doug Wolfgang.
I wouldn't want to bet against it. The spotlight falls on the modifieds right after some weekend winners. Stick around. There's only one place that they run with a co-featured headline division, right here in New York State. Let's go back to rolling wheels for the mighty modifieds from Dirt Country.
The drivers were so excited to get this special 25-lap modified feature underway at Rolling Wheels, they started a little bit too soon. Maybe Brett Hearn and Danny Johnson thought they were at Orange County on this Tuesday night. When the race got underway for real, Frank Cozy in car 44 jumped into the #1 spot. Now watch what's going on behind Cozy. Danny in the Freightliner #6 jumps to the inside, then the middle. Billy Decker in the 91 is on the inside. Brett Hearn in the Auto Palace 72 is on the outside. Then he's backwards into 4th. Decker is in 3rd. Danny is on the outside now of Cozy and goes up into the #1 spot. Decker would take that spot from him the following lap as they went down the back straightaway. Decker, driving a brand new car, still had to contend with Johnson, though. It was a great battle up front. Danny running the cushion just like the sprint cars were on this night. Powers around the outside. It goes into the #1 spot. For a moment, Decker tries to take it back again. Then Danny jumped the cushion and wound up out of the ballpark in between turns 3 and 4. And here you can see the damage that was done to his car. The impact was like hitting a cement wall on the racetrack. When the green flag came back out, Joe Plazek made this great move in the #1 car, getting to the inside of Alan Johnson and Bob McQueen to go up into the #3 position. The defending Mr. Dirt champion, Doug Hoffman, not a factor on this night. He would eventually drop out. Here's the battle up front again. Billy Decker holding off Brett Hearn in the closing laps. Decker would go on to take the victory on this night, but the important question was, would Decker have been able to hold off Danny Johnson?
Well, I'd always like to think so. You know, hindsight's always 20/20, and you always want to feel confident. I like to think so. Other than Danny, we wasn't getting any pressure from the outside, so I stayed on the bottom of the track. I didn't even get a chance to test the top. So it's hard to say, you know, but I think we could have.
This is a 1958 vintage New York State stock car. Take a look at this on the inside. Very unusual. The driver's seat is offset to the left, and to the extreme right-hand side of the cockpit, the pedal configuration, the gas and the brake. Sort of makes you wonder how driver Paul Doig brought this thing to a stop. Brakes. That's the subject of this week's Sunoco High Performance Report.
For this week's Sunoco High Performance Report, we're going to talk about brakes on a dirt modified. With the speeds that dirt modifieds travel today, brakes play a big part in the handling of the race car. Yes, it is important to have good horsepower with these cars, but without a good set of brakes, you might as well have no horsepower at all. This car is much lighter than the car you might have at home, but the brakes are equivalent to something on some of the sports cars that run around on the streets today. For this week's Sunoco High Performance Report, I'm Jack Johnson, driver to BR DeWitt 12A.
Not all the oval track racing in America is the four-wheel variety. There's also the two-wheel variety. And the AMA Camel Pro Series comes to Dirt Country later this month. Chris Carr is a young renegade.
For a number of years, and of course it sits on the grounds of the New York State Fair. Traditionally, the Moody Mile is best known for auto racing, but on the second week in June, the Camel Pro Mile will return to Syracuse to a new racetrack with new clay, with the inside guardrail completely removed.
Well, I would think with the changes that they've made, they sound real good, and I think we're going to go out and set some new lap records. Anytime you can run clay on the mile, the track usually seems to be faster than the old sandstone that we used to race on there. And with the
Ophelia make yesteryear's victories come alive. Kegel's 24, Champagne's 8-ball, and the incredible Batmobile headline a car collection second to none. Reminisce among the priceless antique cars and pick up a unique racing souvenir. No racing fan should miss America's newest racing attraction, the Dirt Motorsports Hall of Fame in Wheatport, New York.
Out of the weekend wars in this traditionally designed dirt modified. Well, in 1992, his son, Billy, is now a star. Here is Paul Small with the latest edition of Weekend Wars.
We begin the weekend wars with the green flag on Saturday night at the Fonda Speedway in the Mohawk Valley of New York. Fonda is enjoying a tremendous 1992 season so far with great track conditions and great racing on the racetrack. Here, Pat Ward in the 42P battles with the 97 of Mike Romano. And here, coming down the fast front straightaway, Dave Lape in the 22 goes to the inside of the 82 of Teddy Lamb. Lape is enjoying a tremendous year so far. He has 2 wins at the Cayuga County Fair Speedway in Weedsport and has been kind of the surprise on the dirt circuit this year. I don't think too many people expected Dave Lape to be such a force this early in the season. A.J. Romano wasn't too much of a force Saturday night. He developed mechanical problems. And Jack Johnson was back after a wild ride in turn number 1 the week before. However, Dave Lape was the star Saturday night at Fonda. On to the Can-Am Speedway in Watertown, New York for small block modified racing action. And the Joyceville Jet, Rick Wilson in car number 24, takes off into the lead in this rained-out feature event from the previous week. Wilson would lead the entire distance, but it wasn't easy. He had the 7-11 of Jimmy Johnson hot on his tail all the way to the checkered flag. The regular features, by the way, were rained out. Now on to the Lebanon Valley Speedway, where Bobby Ogren has a meeting with the fourth turn wall. He just as soon forget. The car rides on top of the wall and takes a couple of hard barrel rolls before it finally comes to rest on its wheels. Bobby was shaken, but he was otherwise okay. Now on to the feature event. What an exciting show this was. A lot of the top dogs were right in the middle of the pack, including High Point man Kenny Tremont in car number 115. Now watch this incident going into turn number 3. Gary Waters in the 3A gets tagged, spins. Everybody piles in behind him, including the 99 of Dickie Larkin, and on the top of the track, the 79 of Roger Horvath. Tremont's night was over a bit later. He was caught up in another wreck that took him out of contention. Then it was Matt Quinn in the number 44, ducking to the inside in turn number 1 and taking the top spot as Billy Decker tried to chase him down. Decker would run out of time, and Quinn would take the victory on Saturday night at Lebanon Valley. And we wrap up the weekend wars at the Paradise Speedway in Geneva for some sportsman racing. The car to watch here is the 58 of Scott Schrader. He gets to the inside of J.J. Cavell 62 and draws even with the 3A of Fran Hilton going down the back straightaway. Now into turn number 3, Schrader keeps the car steady, ducks to the inside of Hilton coming off turn number 4, and a couple of laps later would go into the number 1 spot and take the victory. For the Weekend Wars, I'm Paul Small.
This week, the Fuji Points picture highlights the big block tracks. And we start at Lebanon.